Welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rafae Iqbal, and today we'll be talking about some very important topics. Firstly, we'll be talking about the 263rd Corps Commanders Conference that was presided over by the Chief of Army Staff General Syed Asim Munir. The 263rd Corps Commanders Conference covered the good governance and political stability in the country. It also talked about smooth democratic transition, the human rights violations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and Palestine, and how the Pakistani nation stands in solidarity with the people of Palestine and Kashmir. And of course, national security and resilience against misinformation was also discussed. In the studios, we've been joined by our esteemed panelist and analyst, Mr. Farrukh Pitafi, who is a senior analyst, and geopolitical analyst Raja Faisal. Along with that, on Skype, we'll be joined by Dr. Mahmood Khalid, who is an economist. To start the conversation, I'd like to move towards Raja Faisal and ask him about the 263rd Corps Commanders Conference, which was presided over by the Chief of Army Staff. Of course, it covered extensive topics. What would you say on the conference and how these issues were discussed in today's conference?
Yeah, Rafae, obviously, if we look at today's Corps Commander Conference, it was necessary, it was timely, and I think it was supposed to take place. There are certain facts which needed to be addressed and, of course, told to the people at large. And first of all, obviously, the new setup, the continuity of democracy, I mean, it has been displayed in recent days. And of course, if we look at the elections, I mean, the biggest role which was being played by army, it was to maintain the law and order, which was obviously done so. And the way our armed forces, they kept the whole country calm that day, plus the security challenges which they were faced by obviously people at large in terms of the elections, they were of course looked into, and nothing of any sort happened during the election day, and even post that election day, whatever we saw, that the law and order was maintained and the security situation overall was actually taken care by the army. And I think it was necessary to of course reiterate the facts. And secondly, most importantly, army has actually given its verdict related to Kashmir. Our stance on Kashmir is undeterred, unchanged. We are there where we have always been there since 1947. That is what was supposed to be reiterated once more. And when it comes to Palestine, of course we know that the whole world is concerned about Palestine, and I think it was timely and apt, and it was required by the armed forces as well. And we saw that in the addresser and in the Corps Commander Conference, it was discussed as well. And we have the concerns, and the armed forces actually, of course, shown them concerns related people of Palestine. And importantly, that is about, of course, congratulating the new government, the upcoming government, and the issues which are being faced by Pakistan. Of course, we know that the economy is in a shape in which, of course, we all need to put efforts. All of the institutions, they have to stand with the people to, of course, counter all of these challenges and move forward. And if we talk about the political instability, of course, we have been seeing in recent past, especially in last 2 years, we have been seeing that there is political instability, and them issues are addressed as well. To me, I think it was timely and it was necessary. And even yesterday, when of course we saw that Prime Minister Mia Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif, when he got sworn in, we saw the military leadership was present there as well, and their gestures and the way, of course, they were congratulating all of the leadership. Civil military leadership seem on the same page right now, and that is what is required to, of course, counter all of the challenges which are being faced by Pakistan. So it was overall an excellent Corps Commanders Conference, and the message which is coming out, it was a much needed one.
Right, Farrukh Pitafi, your views, as Raja Faisal mentioned, that it was necessary and much needed and very timely addressed. What's your take on it?
Right, Rafi, thank you very much for the question. I think, first of all, we have to remember that Corps Commander conference takes place regularly, periodically. So that was, Pakistan's top commanders meeting their leadership, and of course, comparing notes. That happens every month, more or less. But apart from that, one thing that I'm really sick and tired of, and I have to actually say it very clearly, people who actually try to attack their benefactors. And I'm saying this because throughout, in the past 20 years, if you haven't, Rafae, please, Rawalpindi is close up nearby, do go to AFIRM, that is Armed Forces Institute of Rehabilitation Medicine.
Right.
And just meet the soldiers who have lost their limbs, who have lost their eyes, who have been incapacitated for life, and these are the people who survived, whose number does not actually add up into this 80,000, 90,000 Shoda's list. There has been sacrifice and sacrifice repeatedly in this country. And because of these young people who actually go out and put their life in harm's way, just because you and I can sit here and comfortably talk and berate them if we want to. They are, safeguarding our freedoms. And at that moment, the disparate forces, for their own petty interest, keep on attacking and maligning them. This is very sad, because on the election day, people died. And I'm not merely talking about army, law enforcement agencies also. There were people who died so that you can vote on that day. And then, of course, because Pakistan is a developing country which has limited resources, things keep on glitching. So whenever some glitch actually happens, may it be, taking down the mobile network, because it had to be ensured that there is no violence on that day. And similarly, softwares as well. People use every bit to construct a conspiracy theory where they don't give you any evidence at all. And usually that as I've actually previously showed you and qualified in this program as well, these conspiracy theories are house of cards. They can be brought down without any effort at all.
Right.
But nobody actually tries to use their mind or apply it. There's another one, very important aspect as well, and I have to actually point that out, Rafae, and that is this issue of hybrid warfare.
Yes.
That continues. And somehow it is so effective against Pakistan that every positive thing in this country becomes a pejorative. For example, Faisal just used a term that was being on the same page, right? Which is good, which means that the country is working as unity. And then it somehow becomes hybrid this and that. And as I pointed out yesterday, day before yesterday, whosoever is in government, the opposition immediately becomes very successful on social media. So why shouldn't I believe that there is a hybrid war going on, and these people, outsiders, actually align with whosoever is perceived aggrieved party, so that they can actually get back at the state of the country, state of Pakistan. In short, to talk about this, I just have to say this. In 2.5 years that the country has gone through economic instability, the country has gone through political instability, and internationally also there have been very horrible moments when because of our domestic opposition we had this kind of embarrassing moments, right? Finally we are coming out of that phase. And one thing is for sure, it is primarily because of the people who are sacrificing even now.
Yes.
If you have a guard, and I'm not comparing a guard with army, but if you have a guard who actually does not speak, does not sleep, moves around with you and ensures your security, will you be wise if you start berating them? It is stupid.
No doubt about that.
And that continues.
That's very true, and of course there are elements and there are people who talk about criticizing the institutions. Well, it should be condemned, because these institutions and these people, these soldiers, they protect the country, and that is the reason why we sleep peacefully at homes at night. And it's a salute to the martyrs and all those who perform their duties in a very challenging atmospheres, and they sacrifice a lot for the protection of the nation and the motherland. Well, that part will move to our second segment, where we'll talk about the cabinet formation and the Prime Minister's meeting on IMF agenda. In his maiden meeting on economy held hours after his oath-taking, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif issued a set of directives focusing on the revival of economy. According to a statement issued by the Prime Minister's office, he also ordered formulating emergency steps for economic revival. And earlier, he had also promised in the public gatherings during the election campaigns that if the PMLN was to come into power, it would not hold back and enter into a new program with the International Monetary Fund. Dr. Mahmood, Khalid, I'd like your views on how Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif aims for economic revival. He also hinted at strengthening the SIFC. Will we see a continuity of the policies left by Dr. Shamshad Akhtar and the caretaker setup?
Well, actually, this is what the economy is about. We need to have certainty in the policies which has been made to strengthen the very turbulent phase in which we have been in the past few years. So IMF is something which the government has to look forward, because unless we undergo a complete restructuring of how our foreign debt is actually profiled and how we actually need to manage it in the future, until that we have to engage with the IMF, because that gives us a kind of a breathing space through which the other multilateral donor agencies also starts to help us. And from that context, the Prime Minister has rightly identified that our economy needs those dire changes which needs to really sort of bring it back towards what the desirable condition can be. May it be the state-owned enterprises, which needs a revamp in terms of how their businesses are done. Some of them needs to be transferred to the private sector. Some needs a corporate look, and some simply needs to be taken out in terms of the balance sheet. Then there was other steps also which we have seen in the news coming up. For example, the pensions has been converted into a voluntary pension scheme. There were also statements coming out in terms of improving the energy circular debt through passing on it to the consumers, and similarly having measures on the taxation side. So that is something which the new government is confronted with as an economic challenge, and they have to actually take forward the policies which has been adopted by the interim government previously, so that in future the same kind of robust growth also happens.
Right. Dr. Mahmood, I'm glad that you actually brought up taxation reforms as well, because that is something that we keep hearing about, but unfortunately we haven't been able to bring about the kind of reforms that we needed. The outgoing finance minister, actually, when she was leaving, she actually proposed certain recommendations regarding reform of FBR, which essentially separates customs from FBR. What do you make of those proposals? I keep on hearing very diverse opinion, divided opinion on this. On one side, we hear people who say that it is going to streamline the tax collection in the country. On the other side, we also hear people who say it is only going to increase bureaucracy. Your take, sir?
To me, it's the reform towards a better FBR, because what has happened in the past is the customs, basically FBR has two main, you can say, functioning departments, and it's already separated in the FBR. There is customs and there is inland revenue service. The inland revenue service basically deals with the domestic taxation, and the customs basically looks after the compliance of tariff collection and trying to stop the smuggling or any other misinvoicing which happens. So it is already in these two departments through which the FBR actually fulfills its mandate. The reform has actually given it a new shape, in the sense that the decision making has been separated. Now the customs department would have its own board, which would include not just the FBR officials, but those actually which matters in terms of like the Ministry of Commerce, the Tariff Commission, the Ministry of Industries, which is relevant in terms of the external sector towards imported and other trade buyers. Similarly, in the Inland Revenue Service, they have also proposed that there is going to be a complete revamp in terms of how the board manages, in which there is going to be inclusion from even the academia, which is going to help in terms of better planning. So the problem with the FBR in the past has been that the policy and the implementation has been within the same institution, which generally is separated at arm's length, because generally speaking, the implementation has to be given a mandate which it fulfills, whereas the policy has to be done separately. So this is what the major reform which was proposed by the outgoing interim government, that the policy function should be separated. There should be a revenue division in which the policy proposals which would be made, and then operationally the customs is going to be separately managed, and the IRS is going to be separately managed. Now, on the question of bureaucracy, I totally agree with you. This has been a major problem with Pakistan's civil side, or the doing of the government, that for every particular activity, they believe that there needs to be more staffing, there needs to be more hands on deck, which is going to fulfill. Whereas the world has changed. We now see a world of tax collection in which the digital technologies are actually taking over. Because it's not the job of the individuals, it's basically the job of the technology to get.
We keep on hearing about automation, but it hasn't happened.
No, there has been automation.
Even said it.
No, there has been automation.
Not only this Prime Minister. Since Pervez Musharraf's time, I've been hearing all the Prime Ministers talk about automation.
But better late than never, it should happen, at least now.
Yeah.
No, but let me clarify. The problem with the current state of the automation is that it is simply converting the paper set of documents into a digital format. It does not actually digitize the process, in which there is no human interface. So, like for example, if you go and file the return, you would still find around 80 or 90 complex pages to be fulfilled by individuals. Whereas what the technology would have helped is that I am a salaried person, so only that portion of the return should come in front of me which is relevant to me. So the problem with the digitization has been that it has been only converting the papers into digital form, whereas the digitalization or the digital transformation as a concept is totally different.
So, Dr. Mahmood, when we talk about obviously taxation, and I know one thing, that you are of the view that sectors, sectors like real estate,
yes,
that needs to be taxed fully, and I have always agreed with you. But a couple of days ago, I was sitting with a couple of very good friends who are related to real estate sector, and of course they were talking about it, and I said that I am of the view that you people should be taxed more, because it is
Taxed at all.
Yes, it should be taxed, but they were of the view that if it is taxed, then the sort of pace which this sector is of course performing right now, because majority of the people, it is too fast, that if somebody is putting money, the money circulation is too fast within this sector. He said you are thinking about disturbing that pace, and if you disturb that pace, that would be there would be implications for the economy itself. Do you agree with this? And if you do agree with this, then what else we have, what other ways we have to generate more taxes?
And
Or
adding
do you not agree with this?
Yeah.
That was an option also.
And adding to the question, there's also that we've heard that there would be subsidies provided to the business owners as well, and the agriculture sector as well, but we hear talks of IT bringing in a quick revenue generation. Do you think these subsidies being provided will be a good step, or will they just complicate things more?
Well, to start off with the second question first, unfortunately, the subsidies has been a real quagmire in case of Pakistan because the way they have been provided in the past actually did not improve any kind of efficiency, or it has not led us towards that growth which it should have been. I'll give you a quick example. Uh, we have been asked by the textiles and other export oriented sectors that if we don't subsidize them, unfortunately, they're not going to be competitive. So there was a mantra of infant industry, which for the last 75 is still an infant, whereas the world has actually moved on. So what we believe is that subsidies and incentives are a must, but it needs to be carefully planned. It should not be provided just because if a particular sector is claiming to be the growth driver for the economy. Ideally, a good taxation system has certain principles to be adopted. Number one principle is that equal should be treated as equal. So if there is an income element towards any particular activity, it should be paying its due share. Where there is a need of providing any facility in terms of economic push, then that should also be challenged with some sunset clauses or some kind of a performance benchmarking. If that is not there, that any subsidy is going to further make them adequate. Yeah.
A quick sidebar, because you're talking about, phasing out most of these subsidies. Let me ask you that SRO Daj has been there for quite some time. Statutory regulatory order.
Regulatory order.
The question right now is that there are so many SROs around that actually give so many concessions to various segments. Is it about time that all of the SROs be reopened and re-examined? If that doesn't happen automatically by bureaucracy, then it should be done by the parliamentary committees?
I fully agree with you. Unfortunately, these SROs are even, I think, overriding the powers of the parliament, because all sorts of concessions or other sorts of fiscal measures actually should be approved by the parliament. But unfortunately, in the past, there had been administrative orders, what you have just mentioned, at the statutory regulatory orders, which actually provided relief towards certain sectors without any particular mechanism of approval from the parliament. So what we really believe is, as you have rightly mentioned, that this is high time that these should be analyzed from a zero budget perspective, that all sorts of concessionary regimes which are provided should be eliminated from the system, and only those should be reinstated which are a dire must. Because what does it do? It creates actually a kind of a distortion in the system. If I know for an extent that if I am investing in a particular sector which is having a zero rated category, that means I'll not be requiring to pay any particular taxes which it is supposed to. And that actually creates a kind of a distortion for me to invest in that particular sector, rather than focusing on my productivity, rather than focusing on my efficiency, rather than opening up in terms of thinking out of the box and many other things. So if we want to really grow out of this, I normally call it as a dwarfism, in which we have been actually pushed to remain small because of these addictive subsidies. We need to actually take away them and only provide to that extent which is going to help us grow. Like, for example, SEZs is a really good idea which actually can promote growth. But why not the businesses across the board? Why just a particular geographical boundary? Similarly, why not to provide credits to domestic production as well? Because if a business can thrive in the domestic commerce, that can actually help us grow out and also create exportable surplus for the exports as well, rather than focusing only on few sectors which are specific to the exports only. We should also focus on the domestic commerce. So you have rightly said that we actually need to now cut back on it, and that is one of the IMF requirements as well, to look into our tax expenditures, which are close to 40% of our collection. So if we can simply cut them by half, that means our resource collection is going to increase by 20%, and we may be able to come close to that 15% to GDP mark, which ideally we should be reaching upon.
And Dr. Saab, Faisal is perhaps going to attack me if we are not going to answer his
Yeah,
question.
we really want you to answer his
Well,
question.
Dr. Mahmood, once upon a time, I actually asked a question.
Real estate, sir.
I can answer that as well, but to me, the question does not lie in looking into sectors. Rather, it needs to be focused on any what we called as the growth drivers of the economy. If it is coming from the construction sector, there is no harm, but to what extent and how much does need to be provided, because ultimately there is an opportunity cost. If I can spend on development projects, if I can develop some infrastructures, I can basically spend on maybe the human capital, the health, the education, versus providing relief to the construction sector, I really need to do that analysis. And if there is corresponding employment, if there is corresponding economic growth, if there is corresponding saving of my foreign exchange and other factors, then I'm happy to do that. But only to provide some kind of a booster to some real estate actors and not providing it across the board, across the economy, then we should really check on it.
Right. And with your permission, Rafae, I wanted to actually chime in as well. I just wanted to point out regarding real estate sector that it has become one of the fields where a massive speculation goes on.
Yes.
And because of that kind of gambling, where files are actually the control of heyday.
Yes.
Right. Because of that, everything actually goes down. The problem with the real estate sector is that if you look at Pakistan's territorial boundaries, and then you convert entire territory of Pakistan into land parcels, right? Forget that we need agriculture, forget that we need fisheries, anything else. Just make it housing units, right? And now think, even that is finite. Right, it is a resource that you cannot keep on squandering, right?
That's true.
So if you are investing too much in this field, which is not that productive, at the cost of other things, then something is wrong. And I think that the biggest problem has been that people have been sinking money in gold, people have been sinking money into real estate, they spend money, they leave it and they forget. Otherwise, there are people who actually keep on speculating. So if you allow us that negative sentiment to continue, or that kind of attitude, Gawada has become merely a what do you call it, property area, rather than all those SEZs. I just wanted to actually comment on SEZ a bit as well, because my humble submission is that a country that has actually gone through the comb of FATF, with that kind of country, you don't have the luxury of actually bringing in policies that can be confused in the long run as the tax haven policies, right? Panama or others. By the way, in the order of countries, Panama and Pakistan are very close as well. So we don't want to end up being Panama. That's why I think that the whole idea is that you create these interventions which are targeted and territorially limited. Of course, in the coming years, things can grow and they can improve, but that was my 2 cents.
Yeah, and Rafae, if you can allow me, I just wanted to highlight a point here, and I just wanted to ask Dr. Mahmood whether he agrees with me or not. The suggestion is that, of course, we have a sort of fears related to people putting their illicit money in this sector. The sector I'm talking about, of course, is the real estate, and there are, of course, examples of it as well. So many examples in the past.
We've seen amnesties as well.
Yeah, illicit money actually gets docked there. But can we come up with sort of a policy in which we say that the overseas Pakistanis, when they are buying a property, then it will be tax free? In other ways, we can. What I'm trying to say is that it would be an excellent attraction for the overseas Pakistanis for FDI as well. I mean, country would still be getting more FDIs, and I think these kind of policies, they must be introduced in this kind of sector. Dr. Mahmood, do you agree?
And Dr. Saab, by the way, can you also draw a distinction between a tax-free investment and documentation-free investment? Because at times people keep on confusing the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we say documentation free, so primarily what we are saying is that you're not going to be asked for any particular source of your income. So it's a kind of an amnesty which is provided. Whereas tax-free investment is a very ongoing kind of a thing in which any potential tax which is related to any investment, in this particular case, the real estate, which generally gets tax in terms of the capital value which it is involving. So that is not leading to us thinking that it's a kind of an amnesty. It's basically trying to drive an economic activity because of the incentive in terms of taxation only. So, but I agree with this proposal that we can tap in the overseas investment in a sector which still has its room. But I would really submit here is that instead of thinking about the real estate as the what Pitafi has also mentioned, simply taking away our urban lands or rural lands in terms of the agriculture, converting them into peri-urban areas, we should really think about going high rise. Pakistan, in terms of the per square foot costing in terms of developing the real estate, has a very big potential, especially in the bigger cities, which are not just few now. Earlier, it was just the Lahore and Karachi. If you look at the latest census, we also have big cities, Multan, Faisalabad, even Islamabad. These are all now very big urban centers. So what we need is vertical expansion. And we need those buildings which actually facilitates the domestic commerce. We need shopping malls, we need business exchanges, we need those places in which the people can actually do the domestic commerce facility. So we have to really think about the paradigm that what real estate is going to be in the future, not just lands, not just plots.
Yeah. Doctor, why not Islamabad also? Because in the past what we have seen is we kept on saying that we can't have high rises here because of security reasons. But then some genius actually allows a high rise to be built exactly at the place where security shouldn't allow them, right at the cusp of Constitution Avenue and Diplomatic Enclave. And from there you can do whatever you want. But elsewhere security prohibits us from building more buildings.
Yeah, this is what the need is. If you don't build urban structures, you are going to require more flyovers. You are going to need to commute people in very large numbers. For those, you need to have metros and you need to have other services. And on top of that, there is going to be a problem related to the climate or the environment in which the people are going to live. So the ideal situation would be to develop the urban centers, which it should be like. And for that, you need to actually think about improving the land zonings, and you have to reduce the regulatory capture by the development authorities, which do not allow conversion of prime lands into high-rise buildings. Take the example of Islamabad, you would see many big houses in F6, in F7, but if you ask CDA that why don't you basically allow these houses to be converted into high-rise buildings, because that can accommodate people, and the people traveling from all the way close to Texla or from Rawat, spending 1 or 2 hours, fuel, pollution, they can actually start living here. So that kind of paradigm is required.
Dr. Mahmood, the houses, majority of them you're talking about, they are actually occupied by the servants, civil servants as well. So are you talking about them houses?
Why not? This is what PIDE has been actually talking about as well, that we need to actually think about these prime lands as perks to the civil servants. Unfortunately, they are underutilized in terms of their true potential. So this is high time that we can actually save in terms of the cost which is required to maintain these public houses. We can even pay back to the civil servants and simply accept this idea that you're simply monetizing the benefits which has been provided, and that can also bring in you foreign exchange in terms of the investment. So simply focusing on those areas, not just in Islamabad, the GUR in Lahore and similar other places in the other urban centers as well, which has a huge potential in terms of possible conversion into high-rise buildings, into commercial hubs, into developing them, the centers of the cities, which can actually facilitate not just the living of the people, but the businesses of the people as well.
Right. I felt, Rafae, that Raja Faisal was only, millimeters away from actually naming GORs throughout the country. But property is one sector. We have to actually keep on talking about IT as well and so many others. IT has one thing that is happening right now, and that's why we have to be very careful in where we invest. You know, because of the chat GPT and AI revolution, now you have GPT stores where you can go and you can purchase a software, an AI, which is going to write the code for you. So remember that you don't want to invest in a field where you might very quickly be replaced by AI. So in Pakistan, of course, as I pointed out yesterday also in private discussion with you, that it is like generic medicine. India keeps on tapping that industry. Whenever a patent actually expires, Pakistan does not. Similarly, AI is also creating opportunities that we have to tap into immediately. But only don't think that you will be able to use not AI, but IT sector as a job creator in this country. Right now, too many changes are happening, and you have to actually take stock of that as well.
Right, Farrukh, of course, we need out-of-the-box solutions as the crux of our conversation, and I think we need measures that are not so traditional in revenue generation. And of course, we need to take initiatives considering all the sectors. We cannot focus on some specific sector at the moment. I think that the government should go all out in all the sectors as well, and try to facilitate every sector as best as they can, because we never know how much revenue which sector could generate. We'll move towards our second segment now, when we'll talk about an incident that has happened in Pakistan's Mardan. Thank you, Dr. Khalid, Mahmood Khalid, for your insights. Of course, you were very articulate, and of course, the out-of-the-box solutions that were needed will be much appreciated, of course. Thank you for your time. Considering the attack on the polio teams in Mardan today, Farrukh Pitafi, I'd like to ask you first, or if Raja Faisal wants to contribute first.
Farrukh, you want us to battle it?
I'll go with Raja Faisal first, then we'll move towards Pitafi Saab, because we know.
While we are actually keeping it light and we want to actually have this banter in the studio, that's why we were smiling, but this is a sad incident.
A very sad incident.
One has to actually point out, once again, what kind of people attack their heroes?
That's exactly
these people who have been actually repeatedly, we have seen, and I'm sure that you have seen pictures of people actually going out of their way to traversing snow, deep snow, to actually administer these polio drops, just to ensure that your kids are out of this danger. And this repeatedly happening, that there are some wrong people who keep on attacking them. Remember that when you attack any law enforcement agencies, they at least have guns, they at least have their mechanisms to ensure. But whosoever actually tries to target the polio teams, of course, they have also a contingent of security, and there was, we saw injury as well. But that contingent apart, these people are actually from the most vulnerable rung of the state, apparatus. So what they are doing, and this is not only about Mardan, Rafi.
Yes.
It is not only about tribal areas of Balochistan. We have heard similar incidents taking place in Punjab, in Lahore, in Karachi as well. So the biggest question, and I understand that our media is so obsessed with grand narratives or meta narratives of politics, that they hardly ever have time for anything that is on the grassroots. But I will beg them, if I can, that please focus some time on these issues, because these are the issues that are saving our children.
True. Definitely.
Similarly, the entire country's media kept on obsessing about who is going to be in cabinet, what is going to happen, who will be getting from this or from that. And Gawad was mostly ignored by national media. It was after a new chief minister was sworn in and he went there that media started focusing on it. And today, thanks to Prime Minister, that coverage actually went up as well. In coming days again, the biggest problem, apart from this polio attack that we saw, similar attacks keep on happening. But similarly, another issue, 2 years ago, we saw floods, massive floods. And at that time, most of your media did not have coverage at grassroots level. It was through YouTube and social media that people actually took pictures. That video of a humongous building actually collapsing in Sawat. It was actually taken from social media. So the media has to, get its own house in order and focus on these matters. Please give some time to focusing on the safety of polio workers and reports on how great job they are doing, so that there is a massive narrative supporting it.
Very true.
They are dropping this ball, and if they keep on doing it, honestly, polio does not stop at a poor man's house. It will reach your house as well.
Definitely. It should be something that should be treated and addressed right at the start of it, and it should be something that should not be let grow. Raja Faisal, what do you think? How can awareness be increased, and what are the factors that contribute to this reluctance for polio vaccines?
Yeah, Rafae, obviously the way Farrukh has put it, I think I could never match Farrukh's words, and the way he has actually done that, I think I would agree with him. And of course, in addition to that, we know that in past, the governments, they have been obviously taking the assistance of the religious leaders as well in this context. And masjid or mosque speakers, they have been obviously hired to promote and to make people aware of what a dilemma this polio is and why it is needed to be, of course, countered. And that is why our security forces, I mean, this incident, I mean, before this, there are so many incidents in which our armed forces, our, police force from KPK, they have laid their lives for the nation. They have laid their life for a healthy nation, I must say. They want this nation to be a healthy nation, and of course Pakistan is still fighting against polio. Polio is a sort of disease which so many countries fought against, and all of them, they are successful, but there are sort of social hurdles within Pakistan that still are being faced by Pakistan. These are the aspects through which, of course, we can counter them. And as Farrukh has rightly pointed out, that our media has actually failed to highlight these kind of issues. They are not interested in this, and of course we know that this flood is in Balochistan after havoc that was created by the rains, heavy rains, and the only institution that was present there and of course helping out people, recovering people from different areas was Pakistan Army once again.
And Navy.
Yeah, yes. and the Navy. Both of them.
And local administration also.
Yeah, they have been working day and night. I mean, I've been shared pictures even from the night time as well. I mean, forces were making sure that if there is a place where they are called in the middle of the night, they were actually outreaching people and of course recovering them from that site. They have been doing it. And secondly, I must say that we all need to join hands against these kind of problems, when calamities or when these kind of diseases we are fighting against. Of course, media has a role to play, and media must play a role. It's not about every day putting up a show, having 3 or 4 political leaders around them and having a match, a verbal fight match in their show, and that is how they get the ratings. I think they need to mature a bit, and the real problems which are being faced by Pakistan as a nation, it's time to highlight them as well.
Right. Very quickly, Rafae, I just wanted to actually connect the two things that we have
please
discussed.
do, but unfortunately we're short on time.
But No, we still have
Yeah,
time.
we couple of time. A couple of minutes.
1 minute at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first important thing is regarding media and how OSRs are treated throughout media, right? Out of station reporters. I think that states, because most of the states actually control media, they think it is better to invest in talking heads in the studio, which is cheaper than actually hiring OSRs who can report.
Yeah.
If you focus on them, they do their job. So I'm saying this because these floods that actually came in Gawada, last time in Balochistan, Balochistan was the first place where it started.
Right.
So I hope that it does not happen this time, but it is too early in the season. And let's hope in coming days there is no massive floods in the country. But if there is, the media should not drop the ball again.
Yeah.
Right.
Regarding the polio situation, you know, everything was going hunky-dory, and then something happened in this country. Shakil Afridi affair, right?
Yeah.
Right.
After that, so much speculation spread because he also used some kind of inoculation campaign to get the DNA and all.
True.
Because of that also, and the Western partners have to actually take stock of this. Because one, we have been very generous host of Afghan people.
Yes.
And when they come from there, their administration is hardly there. So what they are accustomed to is nobody talking about polio, nobody collecting electricity tariffs, and that's why our own domestic situation goes out of control.
Right.
Then of course there's this idea that somehow if you administer polio drops, you become infertile.
Okay.
My father actually received polio drops. I did, and my children also did. So if there is an argument, no Maulavi or no ulama need to be there, you need a fertility expert to explain it to people. And finally, you know, when it comes to overall situation as well, use whatever you have got to support the cause of polio eradication. It has become joke. It has gone from the world. Only Afghanistan, Pakistan, these are two countries that keep on struggling. Please,
Right.
for heaven's sake, have mercy on this country.
Right, very rightly put and very articulate as always, Farrukh Pitafi. Of course, these are stigmas that need to be broken regarding the polio vaccines, and it should be encouraged and awareness should be increased, because this is a matter of, this is a crippling disease and it is a matter of the future of the children. In today's show, we talked about the 263rd Corps Commanders Conference. We also talked about the cabinet formation and Prime Minister's meeting regarding the IMF. We were joined by Dr. Khalid Mahmood, Khalid, who is an economist, and we thank him for his views. In the studios, we were joined by Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. We also talked about the polio problem, and of course, this needs much deliberation as well. With that, we conclude our show today, and we'll join you same time tomorrow. We'll have more topics to discuss. Stay in touch.